Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving deep today, really deep, into, 2020, specifically the final year of Donald Trump's presidency. Remember that?
Hmm.
Seems like a lifetime ago.
Feels that way.
But lots of you wanted to really unpack what went on behind the scenes.
I
So we're looking at I Alone Can Fix It, the book by Leonnig and Philip Rucker. It was huge when it dropped, and for good reason.
definitely.
Now, if you're into audiobooks, it's narrated by January LaVoy, just FYI.
Oh, nice.
But we're going to hit the highlights, the pandemic, the protests, the whole election saga, all from those who were actually in the Trump White House at the time.
Buckle up. It's a wild ride.
No kidding. Okay, so big picture first, 2020.
Yeah.
What a year. This book, it really drops you right into that pressure cooker.
It does, yeah. You really get a feel for the intensity of it all, making these massive decisions, global pandemic raging. Everything feels like it's coming apart.
And the authors, they made this point about Trump's leadership style. It's all about power, loyalty, and fear, they say.
Yeah, they do. And that's a framework that really helps understand a lot of what went down.
Okay, so break that down for us. Power, loyalty, fear. It's like almost a motto,
Yeah.
right? But how did it actually play out when decisions were being made?
Take the pandemic response. We all remember, I mean, how could you forget Trump downplaying the virus early on? But the book, it shows just how much pushback he was getting from his own health experts.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There's this scene, Dr. Fauci, he lays out the situation, how bad it could get, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
And Trump, he basically tells his advisors, and I'm quoting here, it's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle, it will disappear.
Wow.
Yeah.
Stuck with me, that quote.
I bet. Talk about like doubling down, that's power for sure. But where does the loyalty part come in?
Well, the book paints this picture, right?
Yeah.
The inner circle, loyalty to Trump, it trumps everything else. Expertise,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter, challenges view, even with like solid evidence.
Yeah.
Sidelined. It was all about backing up whatever his narrative was, even if it meant ignoring, well, reality and fear. I mean, people were actually afraid of him.
Oh, yeah. Multiple accounts, people scared to disagree with him, scared to bring him any kind of bad news. Who wants to be the bearer of bad news to, that guy?
Makes sense. So basically a recipe for, well, disaster.
Kinda, yeah. And this dynamic, it wasn't just the pandemic, it popped up everywhere, like how they dealt with the George Floyd protests, the Black Lives Matter movement, all of that.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that. How does the book portray, like, the administration's response to all that social unrest?
Well, remember that photo op? Trump holding up the Bible in front of St. John's Church?
Oh, yeah, after they cleared out the protesters.
Exactly. Peaceful protesters, by the way. And the book takes you behind the scenes of that whole thing. The arguments, the power struggles. It's fascinating.
Wow, I don't remember any of that at the time.
It all goes back to Trump, right?
Right.
Projecting strength, control, even if it meant making things worse, escalating the whole situation.
It really does sound like those protests, they really put his leadership style to the test. What about the election itself? How did all this, the power, loyalty, fear, how did it play out when things got, well, really crazy?
This is where the book, I think, gets really interesting. It digs into all the efforts to undermine the election, before it even happened, during, after, the whole thing, casting doubt on the process, pressuring officials to, change results.
Like in Georgia?
Exactly. That phone call with Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, asking him to, quote unquote, find enough votes, it's chilling, honestly, to read about how far he was willing to go to stay in power.
It is, yeah. When you lay it all out like that, it's kind of sobering,
Yeah.
So everyone listening, think about what really jumps out at you. What event, what detail, maybe something you'd forgotten about, makes you see this whole time period differently now.
What's fascinating to me is that the book, it's not just a timeline of events, like a dry history lesson. It's more about the people, what they were thinking, the choices they made, big and small, and the consequences. It reminds you history is made by people, and those choices, even the ones made in secret, they ripple outward. We're still living with those ripples today.
Absolutely. So having gone through all this, one last thing. If you could sit down with someone, anyone, who was in that room, those key moments, what's the one question you'd ask them?
It's a tough one. But it's a good question to think about, right? This whole deep dive into the Trump White House, it really shows how complicated leadership is and how those decisions made under pressure, they have consequences that last a long, long time.
Well said. Thanks for joining us today, everyone, as we walk through this, pretty crazy chapter in American history. Hope you learned something. See you next time.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.